ជំរាបសួរជំរាបសួរ Naro welcome
ครับ
hello welcome to the Australia Award Cambodia podcast series I am Rasmay your host today we gonna discuss and explore about the essential roles of the indigenous voices for the planning and both for preserving cultures and foster development. Joining us today is Mr. Rorn Naro, who is a proud Australia Award alumnus, obtains a Master of Urban and Regional Planning from the University of Queensland 2020. Welcome, Naro, to the podcast.
Okay, thank you, Rasmay. It's my pleasure to be here today.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm sure that the audience, as well as myself, we want to know more about you, about your work. So, can you tell us about your work with the indigenous communities on inclusive planning in Cambodia?
Okay, thank you. So once again, my name is Rorn Naro. I am a Chief of Environmental and Social Safeguard in a project under the Ministries of Land Management, Urban Planning and Construction. I've been working for the indigenous community for about 5 years, and one of my main tasks in the projects is to focus on making sure indigenous community are involved in planning process that shape their lives. So learning from my working experience, I noted that to some extent, indigenous people often have limited involvement planning due to their cultural norms and a lack of familiarity in planning process. So my goal is to build a bridge or bridges, I might say, to connect the gap. So through Australian Award, I received a research grant conducting a study on the voice of indigenous community in land, in collective land titling. And that topic is directly aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly SDG 5 on gender equality and SDG 11 on inclusive cities and communities.
Wow, that's amazing job.
Thank you.
So, I think everyone too, I love how you mentioned about SDG goal that your work related to SDG goals and all of that. And I'm so happy when you mentioned about building bridges, connects this with indigenous communities and then all of that. That is amazing.
Thank you.
And I am sure as the audience who are listening here, any works always come with challenges.
Yes.
So I'm sure about
it is.
Naro's work too.
Absolutely,
And your
yes.
job, I'm sure that it comes with challenges.
Yes.
So
yes.
can you tell us about some main challenges,
Yeah.
in order to ensure indigenous communities are part of planning and decision making?
Okay, thank you. So the challenges are significant. So let me categorize them into 4 main areas. First, and the most important one, and I'm sure that everyone be aware of that, is the knowledge disparity. Indigenous communities often have linguistic and cultural barriers. This limits their access to education, training, and even the way they can understand about the planning process as well is quite limited. So to deal with these concerns, the government have introduced many outreach initiatives that have begun to bridge. Okay. To deal with this concern, the government have introduced many initiatives that encourage more participation in planning, like they are trying to provide easy to understand materials and cultural relevant explanation as well to emphasize the importance of public involvement in planning and their inputs to the planning. However, to some or to limited extents, challenges remain in fully engaging this community. The second challenge is traditional gender role. As you might know, not only in the indigenous communities, but also in Khmer community, I can say decision making is normally dominated by men and elder, which is like limit the input from women and the young generations. However, they might not be aware that women might have more understanding in some areas, especially for food security, in healthcare or education area, which is really important for the community. So I think by including women and young generation into the process, it can also provide a broader perspective, ensuring the planning reflect everyone's needs. Thirdly, geographic barrier play also a significant role in involving indigenous people into planning. Many indigenous people, I can say most of them are living in the rural and remote area, while some others are living in the mountainous area with limited access to the road, and might to some also have a poor qualities of road as well. So this is the challenge for them to go from their house to the meeting halls or venue or something. So it is the way that can prevent or limited the levels of participations of communities, the indigenous community into the planning as well.
Yeah.
It is due to the logistic challenges such as long travel times, high transportation costs, and sometimes the dangerous road to the site as well. Lastly, agricultural priority can also reduce participation in planning among the indigenous people as well. Of course, stomachs will come first before planning.
Yeah.
So for many indigenous family, agricultural works is a top priority, especially during planting or harvest seasons. This focus on livelihood that can make planning seem like a secondary concern. So to address these issues, it requires flexibilities and respect for their times and priorities.
Wow. So I feel like these four main challenges, it seems like, it sounds like that is a big, really a big challenge, like a big chunks of challenge. Just here, I'm sure that our audience have been to Rorn, Mandokiri, the areas that we have many our indigenous communities over there. We understand about especially geographical area over there, and especially like you travel from one area to another to join your meetings and in all of that. So, and here, I think myself, I'm sure that the audience too, everyone quite happy to hear about flexibilities that your projects have been established and also introduced and respects, give more options for people and be flexible and in all of that. That is fantastic, Naro.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Now we move on. So we want to know more. And then we move on. This one related to impacts. So what impacts does the inclusive planning process, have on indigenous community, especially, regarding to cultural preservations and also economics development, improvement?
Yes. Actually, an inclusive planning process is like designing a house with the owner inputs. So without their voice, it is an unlikelihood to create something that truly meets their needs. So when indigenous community participate, it's enable a planning approach that can reflect to their traditional knowledge, cultural practices, and also their spiritual value. So in terms of impacts, let me divide it into three major reasons or major areas. Firstly, inclusive planning help to protect traditional knowledge and cultural heritage. As you might know, and I think the other audience might know as well, that indigenous community, they have their own and unique insight into sustainable resource management. They have their own ways of land use and also the way they protect their biodiversity as well. So when they involved in planning, their sacred sites, the cultural significant areas, or some belief can be protected. So it also can help them to protect the history and environment as well. Inclusive planning can facilitate the resurgence of the linguistic of the okay. Furthermore, indigenous planning can facilitate the resurgence of indigenous language and cultural practices by providing possibility for the integration into community development projects as well. Secondly, inclusive planning open door for economic opportunities that aligns with their value. Community can develop sustainable business like ecotourism, as you might know, traditional crafts, and national and natural resource management that honors their heritage while improving livelihood. So this approach builds a sustainable economic based on preserving cultural practices. Lastly, I think inclusive planning empower indigenous community by giving them ownership in decisions that impact their lives for now and also for the future. So the sense of self-determination is crucial not only for their cultural identity, but also to fostering a future they envisioned for themselves as well as for their next offspring as well.
Wow. So in here, I think we really likes how you mentioned about, you know, the works that you are doing over there. These empower indigenous communities in there and for sustainabilities in there. So I think that is very crucial and so important for indigenous communities. This one, we want to know more about this, and specifically, we want to know more about example related to that. So can you give us some specific example that you love the most? Easy too for our audience, because we are not expert in this area. You are the expert in this area.
Yes.
So give us some example, you know, of successful inclusive planning projects, you know, in Cambodia that you have had positive impacts on the indigenous community.
Okay, thank you. Actually, there are many projects that have a successful result, or I can say achievement in terms of protections to the indigenous community. So just let me read 3 examples, but let's start from the one that I'm currently working for, which is LASET 3 project, the Land Allocation for Social and Economic Development Phase 3. It is one of the project. One of the project main goal is to support indigenous community land titling. We call it ICLT. And we also provide support for the livelihood support that include infrastructures and agriculture thing as well. So we call it TIC for the title Indigenous Community. I cannot deny that this project does a very good job in promoting indigenous involvement in planning. So for each stage of the process, the expert, for example, I myself in environmental and social safeguard, we go directly to the community by providing outreach activity to explain what is the project about, what they want to have into the projects or something. And when we have the project start and implementation, we will go there once again, not one, but many times again, to conduct stakeholder engagement plan. So we go there, we listen to the beneficiary voice, the victims, just in case those who think that they might be negatively impacted by the project, they also have chance to raise their voice into the meeting as well. Something which is also really important is the mechanism that LASET 3 have. We call it grievance redress mechanism. It is the process. It is like the box that we receive complaints, we receive grievance from all the beneficiary or all the unexpected victims to raise their concern into the project, and then we will address it one by one to make sure that everyone is happy with the project. So I think this effectively inclusion help to protect indigenous rights and their traditions, and also to avoid or at least maximize conflicts. This is what I learned from Australia as well during my master degree, because as an urban planner, pursuing my master degree in urban and regional planning, it is clearly see that how Australian planners include indigenous people, they call it aboriginal, into their planning, and it is very crucial to have them in our project. Their voice, their concern should be put into account in planning, because the plan, our community, is not only for Khmer people or Australian people alone, but for the Aboriginal, which are also a part of Australian citizen. Back to Cambodia, similar thing. We are not working or only provide for the Khmer people, but indigenous people, because they also count as, because they are also Cambodian people.
Wow.
Yes, and the Australian education equipped me with the technical know-how and confidence to use inclusive approaches that empower indigenous community in Cambodia as well. And I learn it and take it and apply it in our countries. So, okay, go back to the example. Another example that also can impress me a lot is about the community-based natural resource management. So this program enables indigenous people or the communities to manage and benefit from forest resources, preserving biodiversity while developing or creating viable livelihoods. So many indigenous people have established community forests under this model, which allow them to produce sustainable forest products like timber, rattan, resins, wild honey, and medicinal plants as well. So this strengthens governance between the indigenous community while protecting them. Another well-known example is the community-based tourism initiative that also show inclusive planning. So in the indigenous people develop tourism products that highlight their unique heritage, benefiting economic from tourism. Another one is the community-based tourism initiative that show inclusive planning. Indigenous community develops products for the tourists that highlight their unique heritage, beneficial economically from tourism while maintaining cultural integrity. So one of the examples you might know, and maybe you already visit there once, is the ethnic minority museum that you can see a lot of building in traditional way for the indigenous people in Vatanakiri. So it is one of the examples that we can show how it safeguards cultural traditions and generate tourists and generate tourism incomes and foster cultural pride as well. Yep.
Yeah.
Those are the examples.
That is fantastic, Naro. Something that you talk about at the moment. So 3 things that I personally feel that is fantastic. Firstly, it's about some things that is started in Australia, and now you bring it in and use it in Cambodia, relating to your works and all of that. Here, I would like to talk to our audience too. Australia, what is here? Alumnus is here. There are so many alumni in Cambodia. If you know them, talk to them, get some experience, apply for Australia work. Open yearly, February. Open yearly. Okay? Yeah. I love about you mentioned about ecotourism. So that is fantastic. That when we go to our community, indigenous community, so we can try something different, like food, get experience of the cultures and also the way of people live over there. And it's fantastic. I love how your projects, support indigenous community people to preserve their cultures and at the same time also try to develop their economics too. That's fantastic. So now let's move on to something related to strategies. So a little bit strategies here. So could you tell us about the strategies that is used to engage indigenous community actively in all these processes?
Okay, thank you. Actually, there are many strategies that we have to focus on and put into account. That I think I will bring three examples and three strategies that is very important to work with the indigenous community. Let's start with building trust. Building trust is very important. I think it's not only for the indigenous people, but for everyone, for Cambodian people, for the other nation as well. So by going to them directly, begin listening to their concerns, approaching the communities respectfully is something that the planners or the officials or any workers have to do to work with the community. So we acknowledge their value without forcing our ideas. So for example, although we are planner, I am a planner, I want to develop the community into like a high-rise building or something. It is not something that they want to be in their community because they prefer something which is like reflect their heritage or reflect their beliefs. So it is something that we have to build in trust that we are going there to for them and to build their community better, not in our own way, but in theirs. So we by building trust, we are also be able to encourage them or involve them by using their local language and understanding their customs, and this help be a foundation of the mutual understanding as well. Secondly, to make sure that everyone involved. We need to have a lot of conversation with the indigenous people so that they can share their thoughts and worries. For example, in my project, the project necessary that I mentioned earlier, we hire indigenous people facilitators that have capacity in using their indigenous language and understands a lot about the cultures or belief of the indigenous people so that the conversation might go smoother. So for the other case that they have no ability or have no chance to have such that facilitators or interpreter, I think it is necessary to have something else as well as to make sure that the conversation is open for them. It is necessary for the planner to train the officials or those who will work directly to the community to know how to make conversations that is respectful to the indigenous people as well. The last one, I think it is the strategy to engage indigenous community in planning is to promote empowerment and self-determination. It is to ensure that there is a meaningful indigenous participation. So to make sure that indigenous community have a real say, we need to help them learn and grow, especially to understand what the project is, what are the beneficiaries that their participation to their community and to their future generation as well as. And it is what we call sustainable development, to have them have their own power to go for their own future, for their own development. So I think it is the strategy that we can go to encourage more indigenous people to involve in planning.
That is very interesting, and I think it's very effective strategies that you mentioned, especially hire indigenous people coordinator.
Yes.
I think that is fantastic. I remember, I think the audience too. So I went to Midokiri, I went to a primary school. So because I was so young at the time and I did not understand that the student over there, they still speak indigenous languages. And I asked teachers, they even, didn't speak Indigenous language, and they had to teach at schools and in all of that. I can feel that,
Yes.
it's about that. But that is the most powerful strategies about that. Communication is so important in here.
Yeah.
So move on. This one, we talk about conflicts and misunderstanding. I'm sure it's normal for any work, any job. So we always have that. So this one, we want to know more about conflicts and misunderstanding. So how do you address, this when it arises between Indigenous communities and other stakeholders?
Okay. I think managing conflict start with open communication, not just only for the Indigenous people, but everywhere, even nation, community, but it's also between nations and nation. And even in our family, we have to open communication to avoid conflict. So I would like to raise the example of what I experienced by myself during my work in LASET 3. What we have done so far is to start the project. Like I mentioned in the previous question, we start the project by providing outreach activity. It is very important to provide the understanding about the benefits of the project and what we plan to do for their community. So what they think, is it acceptable for them? Is it effective to their communities, to their belief or tradition? So at the beginning, coming at the early stage is very crucial to understand all of this. So I think the way that we start the conversation, especially at the early stage, can help identify potential disagreement and develop a strategy to address them. The other thing is about respectful negotiation. Among Indigenous people, they might have some more belief that we might not have in our own nations. Respectful negotiation is something very important as well with the Indigenous people, because Indigenous people, they might have different perspective, different belief or different culture to us as a Khmer citizen. So we have to respect the way of their belief, their tradition is. So we have to negotiate of how the development can go further, whether it's really affected or something. So we have to find a place in between. We have to find a spot that everyone are happy with the project. So to avoid the conflict as well. Just to add that everyone involved in planning should learn about cultural sensitivity. We should also respect sacred places, cultural heritage, and other belief of the Indigenous people. So before going to the any place or any project, it is really necessary to train all the officers, all the workers, or all those who are responsible for working with the Indigenous people to understand about something like this, and referring to the different cultures across Indigenous people and Khmer people. I think
that is fantastic. And I'm sure that these open conversations that you mentioned, and also respects and all of that, I'm sure that the knowledge that you have learned back when you was in Australia with Indigenous in Australia, I believe that the communication ways and in all of that, I'm sure that some strategies and also the way it's gonna impact in here. Definitely.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So this one, let's move to, because you are a government officials. This, we want to touch base a little bit about this too. So in your own view in here, so what roles can the government policies play in promoting inclusive and participatory planning for Indigenous community?
So it is necessary to start with supportive legal frameworks. As we have in gender, before we might not have gender in planning, but it's already here, and many people and many projects already put gender into something that need and require in the planning. So Indigenous people as well, it should be there. It should be one of the part that require in every planning, just like what the Australian government does with their planning. They involve Aboriginal knowledge, Aboriginal rights, Aboriginal voice in every place. When I pursue my master degree there, it's quite impressive to have everyone, especially the Indigenous voice, the Aboriginal voice into every planning. All the courses include Indigenous knowledge into all courses that I conducted in my university.
Wow.
So I think just back to Cambodian government, I think supportive legal framework is very important and ensure that FPIC free, prior and informed consent apply in all of the projects, or at least those that are related to the Indigenous people, to have into account for the project as well. This ensure community have a voice or voices in decisions that impact their resources. Moreover, as I mentioned in the previous one, cultural sensitivity training is very important. Allow or train all the officers, all the workers, all the experts that will work directly with the community, the Indigenous community, to understand about the cultural sensitivity, especially for those that we are working for. For example, in some area that they have different culture, different belief of different ethnic people, we should know what are their belief and tradition. Lastly, I think the government should also support Indigenous led initiative that directly allocate resource to the community, because this can also allow the Indigenous people have rights or have voice, or at least, or especially have capacity to build their own community by themselves. By having that, in the future, they will have ability, their voice will be heard among any planning or project in Cambodia as well.
Yeah. Wow. So this, as I can hear, and also the audience too, that is very smart that you connect to gender, because gender is something that is a lot, like many people know about gender.
Climate change,
It's-
too, now
yeah.
it's something that climate change will be included in most of the project now.
Yeah.
So I think Indigenous people can be a part of that as well.
That is fantastic that, you mentioned this. And I believe that our audience, if you are working around Indigenous communities and that areas, that is new ideas, and the ideas that now you can bring in and then make it to become its framework or something is like that it requires to implement,
Yes,
that
it
is thing.
Absolutely, yes.
So now we move back to Australia Awards. So let's talk about, how can a programs like Australia Award scholarships, enhance the capacities of the individual working, in these inclusive plannings with Indigenous communities. How can Australia Award help in that?
To mention again and again, Australian government, they do a very good jobs in encouraging Indigenous people, as I said, Aboriginal, they call it, to involve in planning process. So I think it is one of the most important for today's discussion related to the Indigenous one. So again, the Australian Award Scholarship allowed me to have a new mindset toward the Indigenous participation in planning. Besides that, Australian Award Scholarship can also be an instrumental. Besides that, Australian Award Scholarship can be instrumental in developing skilled professionals dedicated to inclusive planning. So through specialized training, then I used to join many of the training that provided by Australian Award Scholarship or Australian Award Cambodia.
Yeah.
There are many that also linked to cultural awareness to promote community engagement and also to reflect to the indigenous voice as well. Adding to this, research fellowships like the one that I used to be granted for my research, and also network opportunity is also which are provided by Australian Awards, also promote collaborations and knowledge sharing. For example, in the networking opportunity that we plan to have next week, might be from the podcast, maybe have something else, but for today and next week we have another network meeting with relevant topics, and I think it is very necessary one for me as a researcher, as a planner, and as the one who work with the indigenous people to join and learn from the networking and the training as well. So I think it is very important, and it is like Australian Award Scholarship provides a lot to me, and I am sure that it will provide to the other as well a lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like amazing, isn't it?
It is.
So we have amazing Naros here and in this field, and I believe that as a Cambodians and as the alumnus myself too for Australia Award, I believe that we want more amazing Naro, to Australia Award program. Okay,
Amazing. That's my
so start to create this dream and apply for Australia Award Scholarship. So one day you're gonna be there.
highly recommended.
Yeah. So move on with our discussions. So this one, we want to know about bigger pictures and broader impacts. So what are the broader impacts of inclusive planning, on Cambodia's national developments and social cohesions?
Well, I think inclusive planning have far-reaching positive impacts. So if we think at the national development level, I think it is necessary to have indigenous people or any inclusiveness among planning, because it will promote sustainable growth by balancing economic goals and their cultural and belief. By integrating traditional knowledge into planning, we ensure that development respects local ecosystem and is environmentally responsible as well. If we think of the social level, inclusive planning strengthens community bonds and foster a sense of belonging. It can also a way to reduce potential conflict intentionally or intentionally by the project. So I think it is really important to have them in. By empowering indigenous community to participate in decision making and take ownership into their community, I think it can prevent social unrest and promote a social harmony as well, especially among the indigenous community.
Really good. So I always believe this, something that if that is related to my family, if they want to go somewhere and then they did not ask me, for example, if I want to go or not, but they just choose to go, then I would be disappointed with that. Back to your project, this is fantastic, inclusive planning. So you allow people to know about what we are planning, what we are going to do, and in all of things, everyone have voice in there. So it's that's fantastic.
It is.
I am very sad to say that our discussions is almost, moved to the end. But before we end the discussion, this is our last questions that we want to ask you. Okay, in here. So this is about your advice.
Yes.
We want to hear. So what advice would you give to professionals, not just only us, but everyone who are out there who are professionals, aspiring to work in inclusive plannings with indigenous community? Imagine there are so many people work something similar to you too.
Yeah.
So what is your advice to them?
My advice will be based on my working experience as well as my research funding granted by the Australian about Cambodia. So I think the most important one, again and again, it should start with the respect to the traditional knowledge, belief, and culture of the indigenous people.
Yeah.
It's just like the way we want the other to respect our cultures, our belief, our decision as well. As you mentioned earlier, that your family just go there without asking you. So I think it is very important to ask them. It is important to know what they really want for their life and for the community. So back to the indigenous community, they possess a wealth of traditional knowledge that is deeply rooted in their cultural heritage. So this knowledge can provide valuable insight into sustainable resource management, land use planning, and any other future plan as well. And second thing that I think might be the advice for the other professional as well is to make sure that inclusive planning should put into account in all the projects by providing training, by providing more knowledge to those who will focus, who will work directly to the community to understand about the process, about their belief, and also their tradition as well. So I think sum up is to make sure that those or the focal point who are working with the indigenous people give them or respect their belief. The first one I mentioned is just the way that they have to respect them, but the second one is how we should train our officers or the workers to acknowledge about their importance. Last but not least, I think we should promote community-led initiative that I mentioned earlier, that we should provide chance for the indigenous people to have their voice, to have their participation, to put their hand dirty on their community to make sure that they apply what they have learned from the planning and can do it for themselves in the future and what sustainable development is. Yeah, so this is my 3 advices.
Wow. I believe that this is really valid advice, and I believe that like every project day is very practical advice, to be honest, especially that respects,
Helps them.
absolutely, like if we want anyone, to respect us, we need to respect some people.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's fantastic. And also this you mentioned about train staff when they go there. Imagine if someone was, like grow up and raised in Phnom Penh, and now so that person have to go and work over there. So without training and without providing proper trainings and all of that, it could be, and up to whatever, that is really valid suggestion with that. So that is the end of our discussion for today. Thank you very much for
Thank you so much
time,
too. Yeah.
for today. We really appreciate because you are really busy, so very hectic schedules and all of that, and you spend time to discuss for today.
Yes.
And we would like to say thank you to our audience. So for listening our discussion, for listening our podcast. So I'm sure that our discussion for today is going to be useful for our audience. Before we end, Naro, do you want to say some things to our audience?
Okay, first of all, I would like to thank Bong Resmari for your time, and it's very interesting topic to discuss, and it's my chance to promote or encourage more voice for the indigenous people, and I believe that everyone should not be left behind as what we have in the Sustainable Development Goals. So indigenous people is one of them, and we should involve them in any planning especially for the planning that related to the indigenous people living in their own place. So that's all from me.
Thank you. Thank you very much again, Naro. Thank you very much, everyone. Hope to see you in our next episode. And we would like to say sorry too if we create any mistake unintentional. So yeah, so hope to see you next time.
Right.
Bye.